was one of the most powerful 8-cylinder motors in the world back in the day. And I think it probably is in the world. I mean, 265 horsepower is a lot. And this thing could do well into the 120s. And this is just a standard model. Welcome to an episode of Jay Leno's Garage, kind of pandemic edition. We are very fortunate. We have our crew back. Thank you, guys. Everybody's here. We have our crew shooting. We're still under some sort of minimal lockdown, but it's not as bad as it was. So, okay. What do we have today? We have here a 1931 Duesenberg LaGrande Coupe. Now, I've said this a million times. All Duesenbergs were built in 1928, 1929. The Depression hit. It took 10 years to sell them. And back in the day, whatever year the car was sold, that's the year it was modeled at. Technically, this would be a 1928 or 1929 Duesenberg. But because it wasn't sold till 31, it's titled as a 31. Some things give it away as an early car. You notice the radiator cap, there's no Duesenberg. That's what they call that, the hood ornament on the top. This predates that. This is a car that no longer exists. What I mean by that is Gordon Burig, the sort of design genius, probably one of the most influential designers of the last century, which sounds funny. He designed this car. It is called the Grande Coupe, the LaGrande rather. It's on a 153.5-inch wheelbase. It is a big car. It is 2 seats with a rumble seat in the back. The thing that's fun about this car is most Duesenbergs are pretty cramped. People were smaller back in the 20s and 30s, whereas this was meant for somebody that could be 6'8" if you want. It's a long wheelbase, there's plenty of room. It's a great car to drive in the winter because it gets all kind of cozy inside. It's just a wonderful automobile. Now, when I say it doesn't exist anymore, they built 2 of these. Both were destroyed. The chassis exists, but both cars were destroyed. It was quite common to find these cars in the late 30s and early 40s, and the bodies would be dented and smashed. And they just take the body off and put something else on it. Randy Ema, he is our Duesenberg guru. He is the man who probably knows more about Duesenbergs than anywhere else in the world. We always let him take over these projects because he does it exactly. This has been recreated. A gentleman named Marcel and his son Luke did all the metal work on this car. This body was built 100% from scratch. It did not exist, so I don't want to pass it off as a real car. It's real in the sense that we have the exact plans. Randy had the factory plans for this car. He has plans for all the Duesenbergs. He got them from the factory, which is one of those rare things you don't find. We used all the exact measurements and recreated every part of this car. It took about 10 years of working on and off. Using 3D printers, we made all these little pieces here, handles, trim, whatever. This was sort of a Herculean task by those guys. They did an amazing job. And it's a car that gets driven a lot, more than a lot of the Duesenbergs, because some of them, like the Walker Coupe, that aerodynamic one we did, well, a while back. You can go on YouTube and see that one. That is a one-off car and very valuable. And this is valuable also. This just gets used a lot. I enjoy driving, especially in the winter months when it's colder. It's a nice, comfortable car to drive. You know, most of the Duesenbergs are open, and in inclement weather, you don't want to do that. Whereas this thing, it's just great. It's, of course, a 421 cubic inch, twin cam, 4-valve, 7-liter motor, making 265 horsepower. How I came to find this is interesting because a car dealer in Indianapolis, I believe, had found this car, thrown away the body, and designed what he thought was a modern, it looks like a Cadillac, modified Cadillac from the late 40s. It's interesting, with 4 carburetors, that's 240 horsepower. With the 1 carburetor that came from the factory at 265. But that body was pretty much torn up. It was in bad shape when I got it. I was essentially just buying the chassis because as sort of a homemade hot rod or homemade luxury, I don't know what the guy was trying to do. He was just trying to use the powerful Duesenberg engine and chassis and build what he thinks was an aerodynamic luxury car. I think it failed terribly also, would have restored that. I wanted to put it back to what it was, and I think this is much more fitting. Greg Morrell did the wood. Look at the wood on this thing. It's pretty amazing. Just beautiful, just a beautiful job. You know, with these Duesenbergs, we'll do some of the mechanical work here at the shop because George and Bernard and the guys are just about the best mechanics I could find. But when it comes to authenticity and doing it exactly the way it was done by the factory, we got to go to Randy and his team. And as you can see, he does just a beautiful job. Let's open up the hood. We've seen these Duesenberg engines before, but we'll show it to you again. There she is. This car gets used quite a bit, so if you see a bit of grease in the corner or something, damn it, Leno. Anyway, distributor here. Plugs are in the center, obviously, Hemi head type deal. Twin cams and 4 valves per cylinder. I've mentioned this before. This is, they say the Duesenberg was the first car to have a computer, if you can call this a computer, and I suppose it is. It's a system of gears that turn on at specific mileage. You have 4 lights on the dashboard. Every 1,500 miles, the battery light comes on to tell you to check the water in the battery. You have an oil lubrication light, a chassis lubricator that has 2 lights. It tells you every 80 miles, this rod will come up, click, 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 and then force itself down and force oil or whatever you're using as a lubricant to all the chassis points. Very sophisticated. This is a fuel pump here, a hand pump. You have your, right down here, your switch to change the oil. Just flip that switch. You don't need, there's no drain plug. And you have your dipstick right there. There's no actual dipstick, you just have that gauge that tells you how much oil you have in it. This is your Schliebel carburetor here, intake manifold. We've been over all these points before. You can look at some of the other Duesenberg videos to go a little bit more in depth. Let me shut this down again. Now you notice Duesenbergs have locks on everything and different keys for each thing. And there, yeah. I've left the locks off so I can open the hood and get to it easy. I've told that story a million times. I had a fire under the hood. I couldn't find the key, so I just don't activate those locks. We had full disc wheel covers on this thing when we finished it originally. I think I like the wire wheels better. You know, that was an attempt to make the car more modern. The Duesenberg engine was way ahead of its time, so it was the most powerful American engine up until the Hemi came along in the 50s. It made the most horsepower. So for 30 years, this is the engine that did it for everybody. The part that was sort of old-fashioned was the 3-speed transmission, the emergency brake on the transmission, a few other things dated from the 20s. So to keep the car current and keep it sort of looking modern and European, they came out with these full disc wheel covers. They're a little tricky to put on, plus they add unsprung weight, plus one of them fell off once, and so I just took them off, and I like the look of it better this way. It looks like the world's biggest 32 Ford, which is kind of interesting. And also insulting when people go, hey, is that a Model A? No, it's a Duesenberg. Yeah, it's a little annoying. Okay, in here you have your tools. This is your tools go in there for changing a tire and whatever. I can show you that real quick. See, there you are. Got registration and everything in there. The other side holds the battery. And then you just slide these back on again. There's a wonderful guy named Jim Schneck who made some heads for these Duesenbergs. He had them cast. I think he spent about $250,000 to have those heads done. And then they needed machine work after they're finished. He figured he'd supply them all the Duesenberg orders. I bought a bunch of them, and he didn't sell many of them because most people said, oh, I don't drive mine, I just park it, which really annoys me because these cars are meant to be driven, and they're great fun, and they're wonderfully powerful. That's where I admire the Bentley Drivers Club. You know, the Bentley Drivers Club, they drive all their vehicles, and everything is available, and consequently there are people who can fix them and work on them, and they're eminently rebuildable, which makes it really nice. It always makes me sad when someone has a Duesenberg that hasn't run in 25 years. It just sits because there's no one to fix it. No one knows how to fix it because no one has fixed it. And they sort of just disappear into oblivion. And all the myths and mistakes, and the people do things wrong. But if you're constantly working on them and adjusting them and updating them a little bit, you know, without going overboard, it can be a wonderful automobile. I mean, it's 70, 80 on the freeway. It is rock steady. I mean, this is pretty much 3 tons of fun, this thing. It moves when it goes down the road. It's actually quite fast. Let's come around to the back of the car. Well, these just the detail features. I said we use our 3D printer to make. You know, it just looks like a standard coupe, but try and draw it, and you'll get the proportions all wrong. That's where designers are just better than you and I. You know, everybody thinks, well, I can draw a car. No, you can't. It's really hard. And this is, of course, before computers and getting it laid out properly. I mean, this is a 153.5-inch wheelbase. It's certainly just about the longest wheelbase of any American car that was not, you know, a custom-built limousine. The only car that's bigger, I think, is the 8-liter Bentley. That's 156. Let me open up that, show you how that opens. Oh, well, let's go back in the interior again. These are built by a company called Union City. They were titled as LaGrandes or LaGrandes, I guess. The individual seats were interesting. These were adjustable, forward, back, whatever. But there were 2 individual seats, which are kind of funny looking. And it also had what they call aviatrix cases, which fit back here, which was sort of a very early version of fitted luggage. I didn't get the fitted luggage. I'm not going anywhere. Fitted luggage. But as you can see, really kind of an unusual interior. And once again, Greg's beautiful woodwork. Look at that. It's just amazing. Just amazing. But let's open up that the rumble seat. Let me see if I can do it by myself. Hang on a minute. Okay. And you open her up like that. And then you got these armrests that come out here. See, they're padded here, so you can smoke your cigarette or do whatever you want. I don't know how dangerous these were. Rumble seats, I don't know if they were eventually outlawed or people just said after a while, I'm not getting in that thing. But it's kind of funny. I mean, it makes it a full 4-seater car. You've got a golf bag door on the other side as well. But it was kind of cool. You flip that back in, and then you shut it again like that. There you are. Let's move around to the back of the vehicle. Okay, as you can see, you've got one light back here, and it says stop when you hit the brakes. Just one in the back, and a reversing light as well. Gas cap here. This is the luggage rack. These are things I put on it just as extra reflectors. These are kind of cool. These are wireless taillights. Let me show you how these work. You turn that on. Let me press the button. You'll see. And it communicates wirelessly when you want to make a left or a right, as you can see. And they're pretty bright. They're LEDs. And they also have a flasher. It's something I put on all the antique cars just so you can be seen, because that 6-volt lighting is not something to be proud of. This is just another reflector. I turn that on, it flashes as well. Yeah, that's it. This, as I mentioned before, is your luggage rack, spring bumper. Come around this side and I'll show you the golf bag door and how you get into the rumble seat. So these are the steps to get to the, well, you put your foot here and then you step up here, step up there to get into the into the rumble seat. Yeah, I don't really put anybody in the rumble seat because I don't want people stepping on you. Oh, I accidentally stepped on the fender. Yeah, thanks, Bob. Okay. Hey, this is the golf bag door. This is a big deal back in the day. That was considered just the height of luxury. So you open this up, and you can fit a golf bag in there all the way. Or you can put a couple of golf bags in there if you want. It's a pretty good size. That was the idea behind that. Passenger door, suicide doors, which I'm not a huge fan of. You know, I gave a guy a ride the other day. Oh, I've never been to Duesenberg. Okay. He got out and he shut the door like this. You know, I didn't realize it. As soon as I got to speed, the wind grabbed the door. It didn't tweak it. I think I'm okay. I managed to reach over and grab it, but it's a little, well, it still shuts nicely, but as you can see. But and, okay, let's show you the passenger compartment from this side. Once again, there's Greg's beautiful job with the wood. Down below there, you have the battery, and your battery disconnect switch is down there. These are vents to open to let fresh air into the cabin. And of course, this is the exhaust side of the engine. Now, this should be apple green. With the environmental laws and stuff the way it is, you can't get the apple green porcelain anymore. You just can't, so I just do it in that dull metal gray. But it should be green, the same as the engine. You could paint it green, but it's not the same. With the porcelain doesn't hold up as well. What else we got? This is your lubricator here to lubricate the chassis. Starter motor is right there. Oil filter, water pump, fan right here. You know, the fan belt's on an eccentric. It's really just such a well-designed engine. You can adjust the tightness of your fan by moving the notches on the eccentric, so it'll tighten or loosen, which is actually pretty cool. Headlights, and of course your dual horns down there. And once again, I mentioned this does not have the Duesenberg emblem because it's an earlier car. We just wanted to keep it as original as we could. All right, I think it's about time to take it for a ride. But you know, first let's put it up on the lift next door, and we'll show you what it looks like underneath. Okay, we've got the Duesenberg on our Stella Coney lifts. If you're worried about it lifting it up, we've had Bernard's bus on these lifts, and that weighs 40,000 pounds, so a mere 6,000 should mean nothing. As you can see, it's pretty clean under here. Look at those leaf springs. Look how many leaves there are, and they're massive. There you go. I guess I'm just showing off how clean. And I have not wiped this down, actually. We do occasionally put it up on the lift and wipe it down, but I drove it yesterday, put about 50 miles on it, so might be a little dusty under here, but not too bad. Look at the size of that muffler. That's unbelievable, isn't it? Look at the size of that thing. Okay, here's your cutout here. Open and close the muffler. Okay. There's your torque tube to the rear end. We put 354 gears in these. That's your emergency brake right there. There's your transmission. There's your hydraulic brakes. First American car to have hydraulic brakes, actually. And this is all part of the system to open and close the exhaust. Look at that, everything's made in America. Parts of this car come from as far away as South Bend, isn't that something? Okay. Look at this massive chassis. This chassis without the body on it weighs 4,400 pounds. That's pretty good. But look how long that muffler is. As you might have guessed, gas mileage is not terrible. It's awful. It's horrible. It's like, I don't know, 8, 9, something like that. I mean, look at the size of that crankcase. I mean, everything here is massively overbuilt. But you know, when you don't know the tensile strength of metal, then you sort of make things extra strong, and that's why they last a long time. There's an aftermarket piece. That's our steering dampener. you know, the tires are so big, and a lot of times when you get these classic tires, they're not as round as they should be. Although Michelin's are excellent, I have to admit. Michelin's are the only tire, they require less wheel weights than almost any other tire because they're almost always perfectly round. There's your radiator there. This just gives you the whole massive front brakes. You got these here. Those are not shock absorbers, those are just to keep it from bouncing, more or less. Because every reaction, there's a reaction. So when the spring rebounds, you have that to pull it up. Uh-oh, a couple of drops of something there. Take a look. I think that's just radiator overflow. Once again, that massive muffler. These are all wood floorboards in here, of course. Okay, I'll give you some idea of what she's like. Once again, this size of those leaf springs, oh my God, it's huge. Okay, let's take a variety. Oh, where's our fuel pump? There's a fuel pump up there. Now, Duesenberg did have a fuel pump in the tank, but I'm not crazy enough to play with that. Okay, and of course our 24-gallon gas tank, which will get you about 24 miles. No, not really, but it does seem like it, especially at these prices. Okay, let's take it for a spin. You know, Marcel, the older gentleman who I mentioned before, built this car, he and his son Luke. Boy, those are a lost breed, those guys. They're the last of their kind, whatever you want to call it. I mean, he pretty much hand-formed all these pieces. Just a brilliant metal man, and you hate to see that sort of skill just disappear. Luckily, he's passed it on to his son Luke, but you know, it's becoming harder and harder to find people that can do that kind of work. In today's automated society, there's almost no need for it, you know. But if you look at these old cars as sort of antique paintings, you know, like guys that do restoration work on paintings, it's the same kind of thing. And to me, this really is kinetic artwork. It's a piece of art that rolls, explodes, makes noise, goes down the road. These are fun to look at in museums, but to see one on the road pass you at 80 or 90, how you doing, my friend? Like that gentleman there. It's interesting. As much as I like the open convertibles and the roadsters, these closed coupes have a appeal all their own, especially when it's kind of chilly. And it never gets that cold here in California, but it'll go down to the 40s, low 40s, maybe in February and March sometimes. And you get in something like this, you let the engine warm up, and you get that engine heat coming through, and it's just a very satisfying place to be. And it's fun to be in this one because there's actually enough leg room in it. You know, these old cars, well, this seat does move, actually. This is one of the few cars that has a seat that moves, but most Duesenbergs, it's just a fixed seating position. And this one is great. My legs aren't in my face, you know, my knees aren't up hitting the steering wheel like they are in a lot of the cars. And it's funny because you sit up high like you're in an SUV, and you've got more than enough power. I mean, I've said this a million times about these cars. This is one of the few antique cars you can drive as a modern car because it's got enough power and strong enough brakes to deal with modern LA traffic. Plus, the Duesenberg brothers, Fred and Augie, they were real engineers, you know? I've never had a Duesenberg overheat on the side of the road or anything like that. I mean, I've had my problems along the way, but usually it has to do with, you know, metallurgy, you know, old iron just wearing out or something like that. Whereas this thing shifts nice, drives nice. put your foot, you just feel that torque. I can't imagine what this must have been like back in the day. I guess it would be like driving a Bugatti Veyron or something, because most cars could barely do 60 miles an hour. 60 miles an hour was flying back in the day, and this thing could do well into the 120s, and this is just a standard model. The ergonomics of this car are a little bit different. You know, some of the gauges are actually hidden. They're so far under the dashboard, you kind of have to look down to see what your oil pressure is, but that's all right. It's not the end of the world. I'm right next to a city bus, and the passenger actually sitting lower than I am in this thing. It shows you how big this car is. I got a slight tappet noise in this one when it's idling. You just hear it, you know, and I keep hoping they're putting seafoam in, or maybe some Marble Mystery Oil, it'll lubricate it enough to loosen that valve. It just sticks a little bit. Not terrible. Not the end of the world, but to get to the valves, this thing, you got to take the cams out. And I mean, the valve adjustment on this car is 44 hours. It's a whole week's worth of work, and then some. I mean, this was one of the most powerful 8-cylinder motors in the world back in the day. And I think it probably is in the world. I mean, 265 horsepower is a lot. I know I saw the machine, I think that straight 8 had 180 horsepower, and that was considered pretty big. So this thing with 265, that was unbelievable. You were probably 50 years old by the time you could afford something like this. That means you were born around, what, 1880? I mean, you were born in an agricultural society. Probably horse and wagons with your transportation for the first 20 years of your life. Then you become successful. When you buy something like this, it's pretty amazing. I mean, when I was 16, this car was a little more than 30 years old. It'd be like buying a Grand National Buick or something now. I mean, it seemed, because it was prior to World War II, it seemed so ancient even back then, but it was really only 35 years old, something like that. But the two Duesenbergs that driven most are this and the supercharged Murphy Duesenberg Top Roadster. The Duesenberg Top Roadster in the summer, because it's convertible, and this one in the winter because of the hardtop. And it pulls nicely. Like I said, if you like Duesenbergs, go back and look at some of the other ones. We've done the town car. We've done the LaGrande barrel side. We've done the Walker Coupe. Oh, we got one more to do. I forgot about it. We got the Beverly sedan. I think we'll get a kick out of that. But anyway, go back and you'll see some more of the details like maybe I missed on this one. I didn't feel like doing again. I don't want to repeat myself later. But with the exception of the body styles, there's not a whole lot of difference between the mechanicals and all these cars. Anyway, thanks for coming for a Duesenberg ride. I appreciate it, and hope you appreciate these cars as much as I do. We'll see you guys next week.
Mm-hmm.